We are about to make an awesome fish throwing polar bear fighting game. All of these assets, all of these sprites are mine. They're linked in the description. Please use them. This is going to be a great way to get familiar with the physics in Unity. Let's go ahead and get started. This is Unity. Let's get started making an awesome 2D fish throwing, penguin loving, bear fighting game. It's really great to start learning and tackling the physics within Unity. So what should I call this? I'm going to click Unity and I'm going to say bears and fish. I am super creative. Create. So all the assets for this I have created. All the animations and sprites, I will post them below so you can have access to them as well. They are free to use. I put them in Creative Commons CC0, public domain essentially. Boom, and here we are. Okay, and to start, I'm going to go ahead and start adding those assets. So I'm going to create a folder and I'm going to name it sprites. All the code and all of that for this will be also linked in the description. All of the assets, everything. So here's my sprites folder. I've already opened it up. I stored them all in the same place. I even have a font here. That I didn't create, but it is free and publicly available. I'm going to just drag everything into this folder. And there we are. Awesome. And again, this is all publicly available. It'll be linked in the description. So let's get going making the game screen. I'm going to drop this right there. It's our snowy, icy background. And I'm just going to reset the transformer so it will center it for us. Yep. Let me zoom right in on it. And I'm going to go ahead and rename this, well, background. Okay. Because the polar bear is also white, let's make it a bit blue. We're going to add a blue color to it, a blue tint, if you will. It helps distinguish it, but it also gives it an icy look still. Maybe something like that. What's my hex on this? A3, C3, D7. Why not D3? AC, 3C. Not that it matters, but there we are. Alright. Okay, and now I have a background. If you want, you can push it in some and shape it around this. I'm going to leave it as is at 0, 0. Perfect. Let's add our player. So it's somewhat up to you. Maybe you want the penguin facing you when throwing the fish. I like the penguin's back to us. So I'm going to go ahead and drag this and drop it in. Okay. Now, obviously it's falling behind here. I'm going to make sure that my penguin is above. To do that, I'm going to say, let's do a default layer. Let's add a layer. Sorting layers right here. And I'm going to just call this characters. Okay. Just to make sure they're above the background. So now I'm going to go back to my penguin and switch out the sorting layer to characters. And I'm going to call this my player. My penguin's obviously huge here, so I'm going to do a 0.25 and a 0.25 for size. I have found that to be good. And then I'm going to go ahead and start our penguin at 0x. And where should the penguin be for the game? You don't need that much showing. Maybe a, negative 4.5. Negative 5 is looking great. Okay. And that should be good for the penguin. Let's go ahead now, and since we'll need it, I'm going to add a rigid body 2D. And then I'm also going to be adding a collider. Let's use a box collider for the penguin, just because how it will interact with other items. Okay, so for constraints on our penguin, we don't want our penguin to go up and down at all. We're just going to move him right to left. We do need to edit the collider as well. We want it to kind of fit around the body largely. I'll include some of the arms here. And because this will also somewhat guide the interactions with the fish. Okay. So that is looking good here, right around our penguin. Actually, while we're here, I guess it's forced. Let's go ahead and freeze the Z rotation. We don't want to get him bumped. And this is somewhat habit, but I'm just going to zero out gravity. It wouldn't impact us because I've already locked down the penguin's y-axis. So, collision detection. Let me just go through here. This is all looking great. So, there we are with our player. Now, let's go ahead and add a fish. I'll pick this one, drop. Okay, and so what is this going to be called? Well, a fish, shockingly. And then let's fix the default sorting layer. No, we want this to be a character sorting layer. And then on the fish, let's see here. I ended up making these uneven a bit, 0.11, because I wanted to stretch out the animation. Let's see. I'm going to pull this down over here. Then let's zoom in on the fish. Yeah, something about there. Yeah, something like this. So that's 0.14 for me, and 0.11 is looking good. Now, like the penguin, we're going to want the, let's use a box collider, and then a rigid 2D on this. Okay. For the rigid 2D, I turned this mask way down because our bears are going to be big, and it just helps with that interaction. Well, it can. This is going to be thrown, so we want continuous. We want a constant kind of looking after of this, so we know when it smacks into something. And the box collider, those are fine for the settings. Oh yeah, I'm just going to kind of zoop and zoop, scooch it in more onto the body. There we are. Something like that is perfect. Alright, and that is actually looking good for our fish. So this brings us to our first prefab. I'm going to go ahead and do create folder prefabs. Because we're going to be throwing a bunch of different fish. We're not going to use just a singular one. So I'm going to pull our fish into this prefab folder. I'm actually going to get rid of this one too. So let me right click here and do a delete on that guy. And we have a prefab of it right down here. Okay, and we're just going to keep on going. All right, now we need to add our enemy sprite, our bear. So don't pick the injured ones yet. We want the fully functional bear right here. And like I said, let's go ahead and put it on characters. Okay, and then I'm going to name this enemy. That way, if I want to change my enemy later on or add new enemies, it's easy. So here's our enemy, and then like the others, a rigid body is going to be needed, and a collision. I'm going to do a capsule collider, just so it fits the body a bit better. Let me go ahead and edit this. Zoom out a little by using the scroll wheel on my mouse. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Oh, also the size. Let's try a 0.3 and a 0.3 maybe. I want it bigger than the penguin, right? It's a bear, it should be bigger. Oh, not that. Yeah, maybe a 0.32 and a 0.32 is looking good to me. All right, and it won't matter because this is going to be a prefab as well, but let me just pull this guy up here. Okay. And then let's look at some of the properties. Okay, so the fish don't have any perceivable impact on speed and all that. I'm going to put this mass at 1,000. Okay, and this at 0. They wouldn't have impact on rotation because we're going to freeze it, right? But we do want them, we do want to be able to make sure that it's not going to be an issue. This is going to be fine setting-wise. And we already adjusted our collider, so that's all looking great. Yeah, so now let me go ahead, and here's our second prefab. I'm going to go ahead and drag our enemy here and get rid of this up here. Okay. Now, we are still not done though. We want to make an area for the fish to appear that our player is throwing. So to do that, I'm clicking on player and I'm going to right click and I'm going to create an empty. I'm going to just call this throw point, and we're going to use it to know where we want the fish to spawn. So let me zoom way in here, and here it is. I'm going to have them spawn right about there. Okay. And honestly, that's all I'm going to need for that. So we're getting towards the code portion. Let me zoom out by scrolling again. And let's see here. We want to add some bumpers to the sides for the bears to hit into. It's an easy way to make them bounce off things. So I'm going to grab our ice block here and drop. Okay. Now I am going to go ahead and do probably a 0.5 and a 0.6. 0.7 maybe. Let's see what it looks like though when we rotate it. So just going to... Oop, I guess that way it is. Okay, so 90, and then looks like I want it easier to see. 0.8's overkill, 0.7 will be overkill too, but that is fine. Alright, and we'll put this one over here. And what I'm going to do is just zoom in here, and I'm looking to see how much past this line it is. That is looking pretty good. We want it towards the top because the bears will spawn up at the top. It can also have the dual duty of keeping our friend the penguin in. Okay, so yeah, that's at 0.6. I like negative 9.93. Alright. Good. And if we want to check real quick, yeah, we can see it a little bit right there. We could actually, if we want it to be a little more part of our game, have it right there. All right. And then let me call this one the left bumper. And let me add a box collider to it. Let's go ahead and shrink this down. Something like that's good. Great. Okay, and with that added, let me go ahead now. I'm just going to right click it on over here and duplicate this. Instead of left bumper, I'm shockingly going to call this one right bumper. And let's move it on over to here. Let's double click. There we are. Right, 92.9. Let's see what the game screen looks like. That is looking pretty good. .2 it is. Alright. Awesome. That is looking great. I'm going to make sure to save with Control S. Okay. So now we need a score. So that will require a canvas, but I can just go to UI, text. I'm not going to use Text Mesh Pro. Not everyone has that. That's an add-on thing. I'm using normal text right here. I'm going to put 0. Now, obviously, we can't see it right now. Let me double click. And then I want the size to be much larger. I don't know. Let's try a 75. And then I'm going to want it on the far right. We can center it here. I don't want it to wrap. I want it to overflow. Because if it's too big, I still want to see it. And then I also want it to overflow. Boom. Now I see it. I'm going to try to make this work for it, though. Let's try. Width of that should already be fine, but I can increase that if I want. And then this height, let's try 90. Okay. All right. Let me now, I'm going to zoom out and try to get this at the top of the canvas. Great. And I want this top corner. And again, you're just going to kind of want to finagle with this. Yeah, so let's see. 386 and 224. I think it's going to be mine. Yep. Okay. And now for the color here. Oh, white's very visible. Huh. Maybe I'll do that. And then the text. So I put the font in sprites. You really don't want to do that. You'd usually have it back out here in assets. and then you would have a folder. We only have one font though, but I'll do this. Fonts, okay, and let me move ice caps into it. So again, that is a publicly available font. I think I got it from DAW Fonts, but I'll post it with everything. So let me click on this, and I'm just going to choose my font here. And to do this, I'm going to go ahead and here's my ice caps font and X. Now let's make sure I still like this. Yeah, that's looking really great. All right, so there is my score. Let me just rename this so I know what it is to score text. All right, and now what's left is the game over stuff. Now this stuff is obviously going to be hidden at first, and I'm actually going to call my canvas main canvas. I mean, it's my only canvas, but that's fine. All right, so now let's add the game over stuff. I'm going to do UI text again. Okay, and let's call this game over text. And what's it going to say but game over. Boom. Okay. And then I want this one centered again. I do want the font we just got, the awesome ice cap themed font. And then this one is going to be, I don't know, 110 maybe. And for the X and Y positioning, well, let's make sure like this one, overflow and overflow. Okay. And then let's go find our font, which I think I'm seeing already. I am. Here we are. All right. Let's make sure this is going to change the font size. I forgot, but you need a constant. You want a scale of screen size. Okay, so let's go ahead and move this back down. And I want this to be anchored up here. Yeah. Oh, let's make this much larger. So font size, no, I mean, that's fine. Well, that will be larger too. Let's make the width like, oh, I mean, something more like this. And this is going to be more like that. Let me zoom out some. That's a bit better. I guess this can be 6. Okay, and then this can be 110. It's not required to do this part of it, but it helps. Something like that. And then now for the size, let's try 130 maybe. Still not big enough. 150. Oh, I like 150. Perfect. And then this is going to be anchored in the middle. And now let's add the other game over assets. So the sprites again. And we need a background blob. And then we're also going to have our our game over image, which I in particular like. So the background blob is looking good as is. Let's just call this over background. I guess we can do game over background. Okay. And I'm liking this exactly how it is. Now let's call it lose image. So it has a bit of a different name. All right. And then I want this, though, to be a step above. What if I change this up to a 2 or a 1? Will 1 even do it? Sure. So here we are. And there is my awesome bear standing on a penguin, which I made today, and I am quite proud of. All right. So I might want to shrink this down a bit. Don't want the ears to be cut off. 0.94, I guess. Okay. And then let's see what the game looks like. I love it. I'm gonna probably darken, I'm gonna darken this up a bit. Okay, and then now we're gonna hide the game over stuff. We could even do, you know what, that is a great plan. For the game over stuff, I'm gonna add a new UI layer. Add layer, not tag, layer. And I'm gonna call it over. Okay, and that way the lose image will be over everything, and then game over text that won't need it, but then the game over background. There we are. Okay, now let's go ahead and hide this game over stuff. Hide the render of it, and hide the render of this. Okay, and then we also are going to hide the text. that pops up when we lose. Awesome. Well, I'm going to file save, and let's get going on the code. Let me go up here towards our player. Click on player, and now I'm going to go ahead and do add. And what do I want here? Well, I'm going to keep these straightforward. Player script. And create. And now I'm going to go over to assets. To keep it organized, which you will want to do, and I'll drop this in. Oh, I don't even have it yet. Scripts. Now first up is our player script here. So let's start by, I'm going to get rid of this comment, declaring the variables we're going to need. It's a good place to start. So I'm going to need a integer for the move speed, right? So how fast we're going to be able to move our character with our keyboard. And what else? Oops, let me move that. Let's do we're going to have a private vector 3, and this is, well, it's going to be used for movement, as you'll see. We're going to be able to control the score with our player, because if the player is going to score points, we can go ahead and set that one to 0. And then we're going to need a public text score text, and this is so we can output that scored point that we have. For this to be able to, for us to be, it doesn't even want us to, it shouldn't be text align. It's going to be mad at me because to be able to use text like this, you're going to need, I'm going to honestly copy this because, copy and paste, enter. The only difference here is .ui, okay? And so now I can use the text, now that red disappeared on me. All right. These are going to be the movement variables, the movement and score variables. Now I have a few variables we will need for throwing fish. I'm going to put a comment here so I know. Throwing fish. All right, what am I going to need? Well, I'm going to need the transform throw point. And I was originally doing this, thinking I would do this without making it public and just going and finding that transform. But honestly, it's easier, more straightforward to do it this way, especially as you learn. Game object fish prefab, right? And we already have our fish made and ready to rock. Private float throw force. And this is, well, the force, how hard we are throwing our friend or enemies, the fish. Obviously, we don't care about them that much. And 2, I'm going to do 2.0. It's a float just to let us have some wiggle room with changing and updating that. I'm not going to need start, so I'm getting rid of that. And let's use the update function. All right, what do we want to update? Well, first, we're going to do movement equals new vector 3, and then what are we going to use? Input get access. So input get access, and then is and then the word horizontal. What we're doing here is asking the computer to see if there is any input, right? Unity, hey, is there input on the horizontal axis? And Unity knows then to check the arrow keys. We don't have to hard code or type in every little thing about arrow keys. It says, got it. I need to check arrow keys. And what it will do is say, okay, so notice where this is, right? This would be the X spot, Y, and Z. Left, right, up, down, and then I guess width and depth, vertical, or vertical movement here, right? Straight up, straight down. So zeroed out. What are we looking for here? The horizontal movement, and we're assigning that to movement. And that's because the penguin's only moving left to right, and so it's the only thing we're changing it. So the only thing we're looking for numbers for is the X place. Now, once we have that, what do we want to do? Well, we want to use the transform dot position. I'm going to let that fill in. Plus equals movement times move speed times time dot delta, delta time. Okay, now what is transform position? Well, transform position is right here. So let me grab a player. Here's the transformer. Here's the position. So you can actually kind of see where and how this is relating to our player. Where'd that? Oh, there it is. All right. And then we want to make sure we can throw a fish. Okay? And so for that, this is in the update throw fish, just to distinguish between this piece of code. Input dot get button down jump. Jump is just the space button. I thought that would be a solid button for throwing in the game. And then some curly braces and throw fish will be the function that we use. Now you might say, why is this mad? Because we don't have a throw fish function. So guess what's coming next? Void throw fish. All right, there we are. And now let's do game object fish. This is another one that I debated whether to have it a local global variable, but local's fine. Game object fish. Now we're going to use this fancy term called instantiate, right? So we're grabbing the fish prefab and just making a temporary game object on the screen using the prefab as almost a copy. And then where do we want it? Throw point position. And remember, throw point was that thing right above the player's head. And then throw point rotation. Doing this saves a ton of time rather than calculating and figure out where exactly we want it. Just have that blank area labeled throw point. Okay. So now that we have this, let's go ahead. We need to grab the rigid body. So it is a rigid body 2D. I'm just going to say rigid temp because I'm only going to use this in the function here. Rigid temp is going to be equal to the fish.get component. Rigid body 2D. And then parentheses. Okay. So now we're grabbing that. Okay. Must have had a typo. Now we're grabbing the fish's rigid body. What's the rigid body? This thing, right? The mass, the gravity, all of that. And what are we going to do with that rigid body? It's the structure that the stuff hangs on. Well, we're going to say rigid temp dot add force, right? So the structure that everything is on, we're adding force to it, which is how you add movement. All these typos, this is definitely throw force, and this should be a capital D. There we are. So what's going on in this line? Rigid temp, right? The temporary body, the fish that we grab that we're trying to throw right now. We grab that rigid body, we're adding a force to it. Throw point up times throw force. So we're pointing it up, right? The top part of our throw point block we made here, the empty object. And then the throw force, so we're multiplying that by the throw force, however hard we're going to throw it. And then the force mode 2D impulse. What that's going to be is that's used for explosions, for shots, right? For bullets, for throwing. It applies that force to everything the same immediately, instantly, right? So that's what's going on there. Let me hit enter a bunch so we can keep going. We're just about done with our player here. Oh, I need to score a point. So public, and we're going to make this function public because we're going to allow other classes to call it, right? Maybe when the bear gets hit, it will call the score point function or method that's part of the player's class. So score plus equals num. That's the same as writing score equals score plus num. And num is just the parameter, however many points we decide they should score. And I'm going to say score text, which was defined at the top, right? The text area is going to be equal to the score, but we have to turn this to a string because the score is going to be an integer up here as we defined it. Let me do save. Now what we're going to need to do right now, I'm going to head over here, and once I click on player, sometimes it takes a second to update. Shrink this down. Look at all this we need to fill in. Otherwise, the code won't know what we mean. Every time I say public text, public throw point, I must have said, right? It means, hey, we're going to be able to find this in the inspect panel. All right, we need to find it. So the first one is the score text. Thankfully, we did a great job and named it score text, so that one's easy to find. Next up is going to be throw point. And there we are. And finally, fish prefab. So fish prefab is none of those. You need to go over to assets and click here. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and save. Let's go to console and then let's hit play and see what errors we need to fix. Oh, this is looking awesome. So the fish aren't getting destroyed yet. There's some issue with the speed, which we haven't gotten into, but that is awesome. Perfect so far. So there's a few ways that we're gonna work on our fish prefab. Open our prefab up here. Yep, and this still is looking good. So let's just change the speed here. Thinking of the fish, let's go ahead and add some code for that. So open prefab, I'm gonna minimize that some, add, and then I'm gonna just call it fish script because I am infinitely creative. Okay. And then let's go ahead into our assets here, and I'm gonna move it scripts into that folder, and let me open it up. All right. Let's go ahead actually and make our fish a bit more interesting. I'm going to do a public sprite, and what this is going to be in is array of the other colors of fish I animated because I'd like to make use of them. So public sprite, yep, that looks good. Now on start, I'm going to do this dot get component sprite renderer. Yep. Boom, boom. Sprite. So let me grab the sprite and I'm going to set it equal to what? Well, my sprite's random.range, and this is just a random number that I'm creating, but I want it between 0 and 3. So 3 is not included in the random range. It would be 0, 1, 2. And we'll add those sprites in just a moment. Okay, now on update, get rid of that. And actually, I'm jumping ahead, but let's delete all of on update. I wrote some code here, we don't need it, so let's delete all of on update. We're going to use a different method for getting rid of our fish. Let's do private void, yeah, this will be a better approach. On collision enter 2D, so that when they smack into each other, when they enter, if collision, and so collision, this parameter, this argument is going to be whatever I just hit. So whatever the fish just hit, that's going to be what collision is. So if collision dot transform dot tag equals enemy, and this is something we haven't done. I did this because there might be different types of enemy we add at some point. So if the tag is equal to enemy, what are we going to do? Well, I want to destroy this dot game object, which would be the fish, right? So this means me. I'm destroying whatever this is, and that's the fish. And then I'm going to do collision dot, and remember, collision's whatever I just hit. So if it has the tag of enemy, it's an enemy. Dot game object dot get component enemy script, which we haven't written yet, but where I'm still gonna put this down here now. We're gonna decrease the health of that enemy, and this is gonna give me all sorts of errors till we get to that script, but that's fine. And then we're gonna actually use the enemy script again, and what we're gonna do then is call change sprite, because that's gonna animate or mix up the sprite that the bear has into looking more damaged. So it knows we don't have an enemy script yet, and that is fine. Let's go ahead and save all this. So we need to add a tag enemy to the bear, and then we need to create enemy script. So, boop. And then prefab and enemy, open, add, enemy script, great. And then saving failed. Okay. Oh, it's not going to let us yet. Okay, fine. clear these out. Okay. It was a bit grumpy, so let's comment those out for now, I guess. Okay, and now we have this script. Awesome. And then we need to switch to a tag. Okay. Assets and scripts. Enemy script. Open this guy up. Awesome. All right, our enemy, the mighty bear. So let's go ahead and get our variables. Private float bear speed, which is going to control the, well, speed and moment of the bear. 2.5 for my float there, and we can mess with that. We're going to need a vector 3 for movement, just as we did with the player. And public int health equals 2. That's because we want the fish to be able to access health, so we made it public. Private float x move, which is going to be for the x movement. Private float y move, since they're going to add to each other in an iterative fashion, repetitive fashion. And then we're going to do the same thing here. Public sprites, which we still need to assign to fish, I think. So there we are. Here's our variables. Now let's get going on the code. So for the random number, I'm not just going to use random.arrange, because I'm going to start with more than one bear. And doing that, the random range method is automatically seeded by the time in milliseconds when it runs. And if I call up two bears at the same time, if I instantiate them at the same time, they will have the same random number and they'll move exactly the same, which is lame. So instead, I'm doing this. I'm using system get me the date and time now, and then get me 0, and give me a random number between those. And that has effectively eliminated this problem. Otherwise, your bears will have the exact same movement and spawn points when the game starts. So that's what I'm using here. X move is going to be equal to a random range of negative 15, 15 times 0.05 f. Okay, and then boom, and then I gotta fix that. Y move is going to be equal to random range and 3, 15 times 0.08 is what I found to be effective. There's all floats. What are you yelling at me about? Oh, I need a dot. And a comma. No F at all. Alright. So that is looking good for starting us out. Now for our updates, let's see. We're going to need to update the movement, but I want the movement to be somewhat scattered. I don't want it to be predictable, because if I know exactly where the bear is going, that's boring. So just in case, I'm going to reseed this, and then I'm going to change the movement by saying x move equals, and I did this for clarity, I guess I could have done an equals plus, x move plus random dot range negative 2 to 2. And then, again, this is going to be the speed. But notice I'm making it random. So the bear could randomly first go to the right, and then to the left, and then to the wherever. And that makes it harder to predict and more interesting to play. Okay. Now for our movement, just like we did with the player, and I explained there, we need to use the vector 3, okay, but this time we're changing more stuff. We're going to use x move, y move, and then 0f because, well, it's not a three-dimensional game. And then transform dot position is going to plus equal. All right, we got our movement. And this should look very familiar. It's a bit different way of arriving there, but it's the same methods. It's the same approach we used for the movement of our player, of our character. Delta time. Okay. That's looking awesome. And I am going to add, I'll comment it out, but get game. I'm not going to comment it out because it's in here. We're about to write this. Get game over. Okay. So what get game over will be doing is, well, it's going to be checking if they lost the game. So that would make sense. All right, let's keep going here. Now the bear, unlike the fish, is only going to change sprites when something happens to it. So let's make this public. And what will be, and what will be happening to it is it's going to get hit. And when it gets hit, it needs a band-aid. It should show that it's hurt, so the player knows they're hitting it. Health is less than 0. Okay, so first, in this method, we're going to check for the health being less. 0, typos. Okay, so if that health is under 0, if our health is less than 0, what are we going to do? Well, we're going to destroy this game object. Okay, and then we're going to do game object dot find. And this is a bit of a different way to grab game objects rather than declaring them as public variables at the top and putting them in the inspect. So just showing you a few different ways. Dot get component. What component do we want? Well, we're going to want the player script. And what do we want from script? Well, we want to score point function. And how many points? Well, I was going to say if they kill the bear, if they get rid of it entirely, it's worth 3. So I'll put a 3 as a argument. Okay, and then what else do I want to do? I want to ask for a new bear to be added. So, and we haven't written this yet, but GameObject.find background dot get component background script. What is it not liking? Oh, because this doesn't exist. Background script dot add bear. Boom. All right, let me comment this out though, because that will give us a lot of trouble. Okay. Now, so if we hit the bear though, oh, we need another. Yep. If we hit the bear though, and it's not dead, it just was hit, let's do an else for that situation. So else, so otherwise the player did not die, the bear, did not die. What do we want? Game. Well, actually, I'm just going to copy it. Paste it. Okay, except instead of 3 points, I'm going to say 1 just for hitting it. You don't get the full 3 until you kill it. And then what? Well, I'm going to do this dot get component sprite renderer. And what is this? This is the bear. So I'm getting the sprite of the bear, and I'm going to change it sprites equal to whatever the index, whatever the sprite is at the index health. So if they have 2 hits, they'll have that sprite. 1 hit will be that sprite, and we'll get into that more in just a sec as we add them. Okay, so that's going to do it for that function. Now we're going to do a private void on collision enter 2D is what we need here. And then we're going to ask if, and remember, a collision is what we just collided with. So the argument here, that's what, or the parameter, that's what we're hitting. So if collision dot transform dot tag is equal to bumper, oh yeah, we need to add that too. So they bounce off the sides. If it's equal to bumper, space, or, let's add it now. Right bumper is bumper, left bumper is bumper, save that. All right. If it's equal to bumper, or the tag is equal to enemy, so I ran into another bear, what do I want to do? Well, both of those, I want to just make sure I can bounce off of. Let's make sure I have that tag though, oh, I can't be setting a variable. I need one equal sign. I'm comparing. Yikes. Basic stuff there. All right, move is equal to, and what I'm doing here is I'm changing the X motion of the bear, or of the enemy, to be equal to whatever it was equal to, except the opposite, negative. So if it's positive, go negative. If it's negative, go positive. I'm saying, hey, travel the other way. Now the problem with this is if I hit the player, right? So that's going to be a different thing entirely. So let's check for that as well. And this time, notice I'm looking at the name. There's only one player. I'm not going to worry about the tag. Okay, and then I need to go fix transform. Transform.position is going to be equal to a new vector 3 that we're making here. And where do we want to position them? 0, -10, 0. Okay, so what that's saying, why that works is I'm saying, hey, bear, did you just hit the player? Game over, lights out. So if it's game over, I'm making the bear go way off the screen. Because the other way they could lose, the player could lose, is if a bear gets past them. So if I make it so the bear's suddenly back here, that's still the bear getting past them. And boom, I don't need any more info in my game over function. So it's kind of an easy workaround. All right, so let's go ahead and do our void get game over function here. And then what do we know? If and let's just double check. I'm going to hit play. Ah. Let me pause it though. Scene. Oops. And I want to know here. Okay, so when's our player off the screen? I'm going to say 6, they're off. Okay. So yeah, I'll leave it at -6 here. So if -6, what do we want to have happen? Game object player is going to be equal to game object find player. At this point, it probably would have been just easier to make it public at the top or find it within start, but you're learning another way to get access to game objects. I'm going to destroy the bear because you don't want to just leave game objects around. It's taxing on the computer. After I do that, I'm going to destroy what we just found, which was the player. And then finally, I want the game object find. So find the background, which again, we still haven't coded this, but then get, and what do we want? A background script. Guess what we're coding after this? Dot game over. Okay. I'm going to go ahead though and comment that line out. Now that's all looking good. I'm going to hit save. And at long last, it's time for the background script. So let's go back over here. I'm going to click on our background. Add component. Background script. Assets. Let me drag this over. Background script. Let me open that. All right. So what do we need in here? Like always, variables first. So let's do public game object bear prefab. And then we're going to do public text. Up. We need to, I'm going to command C this. To use text, command V dot UI. And now it will let us. Okay, text And then, yep, start. And what do we want? Well, we're going to have a random dot range just to make sure we're getting a solid random number, because again, this is controlling for those issues I was having with the bears having the exact same speed and spawn points. So I wanted to make sure that they did not. So I'm going to do that before I run my add bear function, which we'll be creating momentarily. Okay. Add bear, and then we don't need this. Public void, add bear, and we want to instantiate, which just means make appear bear prefab, comma, what location? The location is new vector 3, random dot range, -7, 7. Okay. And this is going to get changed anyways because of what we already coded. Random dot range 3, 7. But I thought, why not put it in 0? Okay, and then comma. And what do we need now? The quantierian dot identity, which really is a fancy way to say rotation. Alright. Semicolon. So now I can see all that. You wouldn't have to do spread it out with an enter. I just wanted to make sure. Alright, now let's do a public void. And now here is the infamous game over function. Okay, and what's going to be in this is going to be game object dot find lose image dot get renderer dot enable equals true. Not render buffer. Renderer. Okay. Lose image sprite renderer. Enabled. Always the smaller stuff. Okay. And then now what do we want? Oh. Almost the same thing. I'm going to go ahead and just highlight, copy, and then Command V paste, except instead of lose image over background, or did I call it game over? Game over. Okay, and then that's going to be equal to true, and then now we need game over text dot enable to be equal to true. Alright, let me save all of this code, and let's head back this way. Alright, and now let's start filling in some of those public things. I'm going to clear that out for now. Let's go with prefabs first. Let me click on my bear, open up my prefab, and let's see what the code needs. Okay, 2 health is already set up. I need his sprites. So this will be 0 means 0 health, right? Or about to die. So we would need that one. Lots of band-aids. And then our 1 band-aid. And then our regular sprite. There we are. Okay, so that should be good. Now let's try our fish out. What's our fish needs? Oh, sprites as well. There's actually 3 options here as well. So it doesn't really matter the order. I'll go orange, green, and again, all of these assets will be linked in the description. There we go. So they're all set. Let's head back to the game. Let's do background. I need the bear prefab. So assets, enemy, game over, player. Player we fill in, just throw a point, need anything, nope. Left bumper. Okay, and then main canvas doesn't have a script. Let's do game over, nope, lose image. Alright, I'm gonna hit play, let me just hit save on all this, and let's start debugging. Oh, my score isn't going up. Oh, I need to uncomment some stuff. Also, my fish is going super fast. Alright, so let's start with that stuff. Throw force 3 maybe? Okay, and then I need to uncomment this. And let's see what else. Now that all the code's done. Okay. I kind of want the fish to be above everything almost. Let me open this up. And I am going to do a new layer. Add layer. Sorting layers. Fish. And I don't want it over background stuff, but I'm going to put it right here so it's over all that. Alright. So I hit an error and I'm going to skip the whole debugging process and just go right to the solution for you. This error was in the enemy script. When the player gets... Oh, I know what. We're destroying the player before we run the code. Okay, so I actually left this out of my first version of this because it was funny. Because with the game over, you could still just move the character around just a bit, but there was nothing you could do. So I thought that was entertaining. I'm going to get rid of destroying the character on game over. Let me save all this. And yeah, let me... oh, let's speed up the fish. So, too fast, too slow, I can't make up my mind. Player, let's say 6. I'm saying 6. Another thing I noticed is we need to make sure the fish get destroyed when they go off the top of the screen. So let's work on that now. Let's go to fish. And what we want to do here is... we need to make sure the fish get destroyed when I miss, similar to what we do when the enemy passes here. Oh, well, when the enemy passes, the game is over, but right here. So if, I'm going to just copy this, go over to my fish, and then I'm going to go ahead and do a void update, which we hadn't used here. And there we are. And then I'm going to control V, so I'm going to paste it. If transform, and this is probably going to be 6. Let me double. Nope, it's -6, just like. I just skipped over a bunch of debugging. Make sure on line 16, transform.position.y, you do want it to be positive, alright, but you need to flip around the less than sign to be greater than sign. So I have it greater than 7 right now. Greater than 6 would also work just fine. Alright, let's test this out. And now, notice how many fish I have? They disappear. Perfect. Alright, we got there. Now, I want to do a full-blown maximize, and let's see me. Goo. No. Oop, got that one. I'm at 10 points, notice. Yeah. Oh, these bears are fast. No. 58. Oh, alright, I guess we'll call it. Hopefully you made an awesome game too. I hope you found this helpful or enjoyable. That bear's about to disappear. And yeah, if you made something cool, make sure to tell me about it below. If you're watching this, if you're kind of still watching this, which you are, make sure to hit like, make sure to subscribe. It gives me warm fuzzies and makes the world a better place. All of those assets are also posted below. Download them, use them, make cool stuff. I'm going to go back to saving the world from polar bears.